Hello and welcome back to InTune with TEU with Azeem Subhani, CEO of TEU Global. Today's podcast is a special podcast. We are joined by two industry experts. We have Tom Cook, a formidable voice in our industry, an author, a mentor, and a trainer. We welcome him. He took the time out of his busy schedule for us. His books that I've read and many of, and I should confess that I should be reading more of them. The list of his books will be provided. I have a few books here. I can share with you the names, and you will see the list of it at the end of this video. Secondly, we're joined by Paul DeLuca. He is a 35-year veteran and second-generation mariner, a steamship line operations manager. He's done the sales development of steamship line work here in the U.S., worked for many steamship lines as their integral part. So we're looking forward to working with him through this podcast. So let me start with a very urgent question. I'm pretty sure everybody would benefit from the first question to Tom. And that question pertains to the tariff situation that we're dealing with and how that will be different. We all know under Republican administration, laissez-faire, free trade, trickle-down economy, all of those are very synonymous with the administration. So, Tom, question to you. Was the hyper tariff way to go?
What Trump is doing, and supported by the entire administration, is that he's trying to create a circumstance where all the countries around the world that buy products from the United States are at the same level of duty as when they ship to the United States that they're paying. The example is as follows. If BMW manufactures a car in Germany and they ship that to the United States, when it passes through the border, they pay a 2.5% duty rate. If General Motors was to send one of its cars to Germany for sale, when it crosses the border into Germany, they're paying a 17.5% duty rate. So there's a significant imbalance of trade because of that. And if you amplify that by about 150 countries around the world that we sell to, we're in a very uncompetitive position because all around the world, the duty rates are anywhere from 4 to 5 times higher than they pay when they ship to the United States. So his concept of reciprocity is to force these countries to lower their rates. And in fact, that concept is working because more than 100 countries now have acquiesced and offered much lower tariffs and duties on the goods coming from the United States. The second issue that he's dealing with is that he wants to see more manufacturing come back to the United States, and he wants to see more foreign companies, foreign countries making investment here in the United States. So he's using tariffs to negotiate that whole aspect. And in fact, that's working as well because the Department of Commerce has put out that more than $1 trillion additional investment has come in this year, with as much as 17 to 18 million over the next 5 years. So whether or not we agree with the strategy, the goals are pretty realistic and I think pretty mature for what they are. That process causes chaos, disruption, and uncertainty. And one of the things are they're coming at us at 90 miles an hour. He's not giving supply chain executives enough time to react, okay? And he's making changes as time goes along. So if you just take a purchasing manager who's in supply chain working for a company, and they're now looking at where they're going to source because they have to buy something 6 months in advance, with the concern that if they choose a particular country, that the rules might change because of this continuation of Trump evolving how he's handling this. And I asked a senior level executive in the Department of Commerce, when do we expect this chaos to end? And his response to me with a wink, wink was, President Trump has a little bit more than 3 years left in the office, and we probably should expect the continuation of that because his policy, as disruptive as it is actually working for what he has as his goals. But the more important aspect is that what can companies do to help mitigate these issues? So we've come up with 21 solutions for companies, and I'll just highlight a few of them for your viewership. One is foreign trade zones. We have about 32 to 35 projects going around the United States in about 20 different states. And the foreign trade zones allow a importer to import goods into the United States into either a warehousing, distribution, or manufacturing location and defer the duty obligation until the goods come through and come out. And in a foreign trade zone, they have an unlimited amount of time to keep it in there. And they can commingle domestic, international, and they can change through a manufacturing or assembly process what the product actually is when it exits. Trump has put a temporary hold on the tariff inversion benefit, but companies still get the deferral. Any merchandise that's exported from that facility, and there are a lot of U.S. companies that export product up to Canada and down to Mexico or into the Caribbean, anything exported, there would be no obligation to pay duty because the goods would never enter the United States. So it's a significant duty mitigation program. Bonded warehouses is another one that works just as well, but the big difference is you have 5 years and you're not allowed to materially change the product in the bonded warehouse, but it works basically the same way. Another one that we're using very quickly is tariff engineering. And this is altering the makeup and the materials of a product that we import to change the HTS number for the purpose of lowering the duty rate. So you can take a woman's dress, and as soon as you put pockets in it, it changes the HTS number and it offers a lower duty rate. If you add felt to sneakers, okay, it changes the nature of the product, the HTS number, and the duty rate. And there are lots of examples like this to go on and on. Just in the last year, we've had about, let's say, 30 engagements where we were able to work with their engineering and materials teams at altering how their products are made or developed overseas to get a favorable HTS number and change the duty rate. And the last point I make is demand planning, is every company has to figure out how much do we order and when do we order and how do we arrange the shipping into the United States. If you look at the different air freight and ocean freight, air freight is 18 times more expensive when you look at it as a per kilo or a per cubic meter basis. So when we go into analysis in a company's supply chain and we see that they're spending more than 5% of their freight spend in the area of air freight, we now inspect and investigate why. And in many cases, it's because they have to rush shipments over because they were delayed in actually getting the information to the supplier so that they get the freight manufactured and then shipped on a timely basis. So we then work on the demand planning process to bring in technology and to improve the communication system between the U.S. company and the supplier overseas. And with that, we can lower the amount of air freight and therefore impact the freight cost. Because we're not just looking to impact duty, we're looking to impact landing costs, which is the accumulation of what it takes to move the product from overseas all the way here into the United States. Duty is only one of 5 silos of that landed cost model.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for shedding some light on it, on this issue. A question that this leads into is the rapidly changing regulatory environment that we are dealing with. So importers are relying on their brokers to do their compliance and not having the in-house expertise. How does that play into this rapid change? And how does an importer actually ensure that they're not paying any more than what they need to pay in tariffs?
Right. Well, this is part of the anxiety that has been created by the current administration. Probably the most important person in the supply chain right now is a custom house broker, because the importers are heavily relying on them to make sure that they are paying not only the correct amount of duty, but that they're paying the most cost-effective way moving it. But before I go to that part of the conversation, Trump in his strategy to impact flow of money and revenue into the Treasury, besides utilizing tariffs to do that, he is rearming and restructuring U.S. Customs. And from 1993 to 3 months ago, customs officers were considered trade facilitators, that they were partners with people in the supply chain to help them facilitate their import and export transactions. Trump has turned that around and he said, not trade facilitators anymore. They are enforcement officers sanctioned by the Treasury Department and Department of Homeland Security. And he's actually created a task force between Customs, Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice to go after companies that are not doing things correctly in a number of categories. The valuation of the merchandise, particularly as it relates to related parties, the correct HTS number, the origin of the goods. We have a lot of companies that buy in China, move the goods to a subsidiary in Australia, and move the goods from Australia to the United States, say its origin is Australia. That type of problem is occurring with a greater degree of frequency. So the makeup of the material, bill of material, is now a critical aspect of the whole import process. All the way going back, the origin of customs, 1789, there's always been a concept of what's called substantial transformation. Substantial transformation says, where did a product become what it is? Not where the materials come from is what is the country of origin. So that example of BMW making a car in Germany, they might import engines from Italy, tires from France, electronic components from China, leather from Brazil to make up that car. But substantial transformation would say if those materials become a car in Germany and a car gets imported to the United States, then Germany is the country of origin. You don't have to worry about where the parts and components come from. Trump has changed that through executive order that now a customs officer can ask for a bill of materials. And on that bill of materials, they have to line out all the materials that make up the product, identify the origin of those materials and what percentage they are against the total of the invoice. And the idea is that if you can't show that there's a predominance of value add in Vietnam or Mexico or Canada or any other country, then it is the country where the major parts and components come from. And if that's China, then that's what has to show on the documentation. And it's a substantial difference in how customs has been run for hundreds of years. And it's really turning the industry over because we've always used this concept of substantial transformation, and we cannot do that anymore. So the question about how does a porter, kind of create a circumstance where they can absolutely control this whole process successfully, the answer is there is no defined absolute answer to eliminate the problem. The issue is you can take steps to mitigate the problem, trying to create the best case circumstance for you. Because as this is evolving, the interpretation of the rules and regulations takes several weeks to almost months to figure out exactly what the executive order means and how customs is going to interpret that executive order and implement the changes in the Federal Register. So our suggestion to is that, first of all, they make sure that their custom house brokers are paying attention to all the changes and all the detail, that they have their more senior executive team doing daily oversight. And a lot of companies will reach out to third parties, such as consulting companies like mine or trade attorneys or other people who have the expertise in those areas of import classification, valuation, bills of material, all these subject matter. And you check and you recheck and you check again. And that will help get you to the best circumstance you could be in with no guarantee that you still won't have an issue.
Very valuable feedback from you, very valuable information. Last but not least, another issue that we are seeing rapidly developing, which is U.S. Customs non-tariff, non. Let's put it this way: they're stopping imports by targeting certain countries and asking more questions. So valuation questions have become very rapid, very frequent. And you see CF28s and 29s coming into brokers. Now, for large companies, maybe they have legal departments within brokerage industry, but smaller customs brokerage houses are suffering with all this feedback that they have to do, and most of them, their customer base is not willing to pay anymore. So this is going to change the way the customs brokerage organizations are going to operate. Any thoughts on that?
First of all, anything with related parties, no matter what country the origin is being targeted. And the big issue there is the valuation. Are they still using what we consider a wholesale market value that can be justified in the industry? And they're looking at that very, very carefully. And those other issues of origin and HTS number and so forth become a very critical issue. And you're absolutely right. The larger companies have much more resources available to them, and the mid-sized, the smaller companies. They have to really think about who they're using to do their customs clearances and take price out of the equation, because you can't be negotiating your brokerage rate so intensely that you're going to sacrifice the level of service or the level of competence of the party that's doing the transaction. So you've got to really change your mind saying, where do I get the best value for my spend, rather than trying to focus on cost. And I think every importer right now has to really think that way, not only in terms of how they manage their suppliers, but how they manage the whole supply chain process, of which their custom house broker now is a very critical factor. And they can create, questionnaires such as, how are you staying current? How are you implementing the changes that are coming from the White House and from customs into the supply chain to protect my interest as an importer? These are questions that not necessarily were asked a year ago, but now become a very critical part of the qualification process. And we see it as consultants that the custom house brokers that focus on doing things quickly and fast are losers in this circumstance, and the ones that are doing it with quality control, taking their time, using resources to make sure they're being done correctly, those are the ones that are surviving. And I'll bring into this conversation is that UPS, FedEx, and DHL, their whole business model is set up to move freight through the supply chain quickly. So when they have a plane land in Memphis or Louisville, and they've got to move 3,000 transactions through the supply chain quickly, they are not doing the customs clearance process as responsibly as they should be. And in our practice now, we're seeing more companies coming in who have problems with the integrated carriers, UPS, FedEx, and DHL, because set up to do things quickly, not responsibly. And it's showing now. And our colleagues that we have in friendship relationships with companies who do the same thing we do, they're all seeing a high uptick of problems with those integrated carriers. And part of their issue legitimately is that the de minimis rule now caused them to have to do clearances on every package that comes in, where, the ones that were $800 in value or less were able to get in without a customs clearance. And that whole thing changed as well.
Thank you very much, Tom, for you joining us. We welcome you as the things are changing so rapidly. We've discussed it. We'll invite you again, hopefully with more pinpointed and forensic information about certain changes that are expected. We're going to be talking about some of the steamship line side. If you've noticed, steamship lines after the COVID and where they were flush with money, they acquired a lot of assets. And we've seen some deterioration in the performance of those assets. Just a couple of days back, we saw STG filing for a Chapter 11 protection. STG, that is the backbone of a lot of our supply chain. background, that is definitely a news worthy of our attention. So Paul and I will be discussing what's going on there. So let me turn to Paul for a little bit, and then we'll conclude. Paul, so let me get into the logistics side. So my first question, Paul, to you would be that post-COVID rush of revenues, a rush of bounty into our business led into many things being overestimated in logistics operations in the U.S. And then post a tariff, when the demand is weak, we see some things changing. So recently there was a news of STG asking for a Chapter 11 protection, which is basically the restructuring of their debt. Does that lead into more changes that are coming up, especially when the steamship lines have bought a lot of assets in the U.S.? How do you see those changes playing into it?
Yeah, great question. So um, you're going to see more changes as post COVID and now post tariff or active tariff going on right now. A lot of the assets that the steamship lines have bought and created logistical entities are a little bit clumsy, a little bit awkward to work with right now because they're separate verticals under one umbrella. They have to be a little faster in adapting to the marketplace and using their synergies well. With us in the traditional freight forwarding industry, we've always been nimble. We live in that market. It's not something we need to grow into. So I think you'll see more of this protection orders, more of the lessening of services being offered on a larger scale, maybe coast to coast or worldwide, based on the scarcity of cargo that we're seeing, changing in port rotations, and just better asset utilizations.
So the second question would be, with the steamship lines looking at their acquisitions in the U.S. being under threat, and then the demand is still squeezing, but steamship lines are largely shielded. Their main line haul operations do not reside in the U.S. So the weaker economy or weaker demand in the U.S. In terms of trade volume would not affect them that much. What do you see happening with the steamship lines in that respect?
The steamship lines on traditional end-to-end port-to-port operations will be a lot more faster paced. They control their assets, which is the ships, the ports in most areas. They'll push capacity in and out as they need. The beginning stages of a seismic change will definitely lead to some disruptions in services for customers and liners together. But their war chest that they've created over the many years have given them the ability to move ships in and out without actually affecting the bottom line. I see them going back to the traditional port-to-port bills of ladings. I see them going more back to their original DNA of sheltering themselves from this changes outside of their control.
Gotcha. And this Zim acquisition rumors, we all chuckle, right?
Yeah.
So MSC's thrown their hat into the ring, right?
Absolutely,
So lately,
yeah.
how do you see that happening?
I don't know. Hapag-Lloyd's in the race. MSC's throwing their hat into the race. I don't know if it's the wolves jumping onto the antelope or not, but it's always rumors until it's proven. So I don't know if it's actually going to happen or not, but we will see. But you'll see more of this kind of conjecture going around as the year progresses.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Paul. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I thank both Tom and Paul for joining us. Lots of good information. We'll continue this series with latest updates. Individually, I get you every week some updates, but this bigger program would be once a month, hopefully, going forward. And we'll invite people who are going to get you information that affects your bottom line. And what we learned today from Tom was very crucial, that there is more to come, more changes to come, and our customers, our mutual customers, individual customers are advised to be very vigilant about these changes. If the tariff changes require U.S. Customs in returning any of the tariff duties paid, we should also be ready for that. although it doesn't look like it's on the horizon, but Supreme Court is definitely looking into that. Thank you very much for listening to us, tuning in to InTune with TEU. Looking forward to our next session together. Thank you. Take care.